All right, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the same crew of people as usual. This is Nick,
Mike,
and Travis.
Dang, we are getting good at that. Anyway,
I almost had a different name for some reason. That would have been weird.
He's now Matt. Anyway, this is going to be a very similar topic to what we did last time, but instead of the best game that we played this year, this is going to be what we think is the best game that came out in 2017. So, we might have not necessarily have played this game, but we've seen gameplay, we've maybe seen some footage, or maybe we've watched or read some reviews about it, and this is going to be what we think is the best game that actually came out in 2017. So, who would like to start us off with what they think is one of the best games that came out in 2017?
I can start out because I feel like I never actually start out in any videos ever.
There we go.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I'll base all of mine based on games I have played. So I have not played the new Zelda or Mario, even though I, definitely had an interest in it. I'll definitely be playing it later. But my games that I chose are ones that I've actually got my hands on. And first one I'll talk about will be Call of Duty World War II. I loved it. It was everything that I was hoping that it would be, especially in the games coming out one where I was super hopeful about it. Not only did it meet all of my expectations, but it did things in it that I didn't know it would do that I completely loved. Because I always used to play the Call of Duty games based on the campaigns. And then when I found out, with this campaign, that it didn't have health regen, you actually had to find health packs and heal yourself that way. I thought that was amazing because I always play hardcore, and just hiding behind a pile of sandbags for 10 seconds, I always thought was stupid that you're already full health if it's core. So it made you be a lot more careful in what you're doing. And then, actually kind of have you plan out what you're actually about to do. Because I know in every single campaign before it, I would just go in guns blazing and, shoot down a billion people. And then once I saw that there was red, I would just lay down and I would be completely fine from everything unless a grenade was thrown at me.
Right.
So, this one, I couldn't just be that reckless idiot. And I actually had to be okay, so they are over there, so I should probably throw a smoke grenade and then, wait a little bit and execute my plan. But then, like I said in previous videos, or the last video, that I also really enjoyed different things that they did within the campaign, like the spy mission and things like that, because it was innovative and new, but it wasn't, making you have to use a certain gimmick in order to actually use it and have it be enjoyable.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah,
it's like we talked about in the 2017 is important gaming year video.
Exactly.
I think kind of what you said, it took something that is done before and it innovated it.
Exactly.
And I think it's funny because I've heard from different groups of people. Some people hate this game and some people love this game. And I think it depends what Call of Duties you started with. I think people like you that started with the older games loved this game. And I think people that sort of started with Advanced Warfare didn't like this game because they said, oh, the aiming is bad. These guns are horrible. And my whole thing is, it's World War II guns,
Right.
Sorry, your grenades don't fly in the air and run to the target,
Right.
I think this is more skill-based. So, I agree with what you said. I think this was a phenomenal game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go with one of this ones. I know I would want to say Sonic Mania so badly because I've talked about it so many times. But as for such a very small audience in my mind, and so if I'm going to say the best game of 2017, my logic is it's got to be for a bigger audience than that. So, sadly, I can't say Sonic Mania as the best game of 2017 as much as I would want to. But I'm actually going to go with Horizon Zero Dawn. But that's because of a couple of issues. One, as I know we touched about it before, I like the fact that they're willing to go with a strong female protagonist that is not basically Lara Croft from the old days. That, yeah, it was very, very badly over-sexualized and whatnot. And I mean, I started seeing it in some of the other games that I played, like in Fire Emblem Fates. Camilla is also like that as well, and very emphasizing on, boobs.
And then
anyway,
Samus also fell victim to that, where she was just a badass at the beginning, and now she was kind of a sexualized character.
Smash Bros is the thing that ruined her.
Yeah, well, Smash Bros. Was also pretty bad, too. So, I mean, I'm going to talk about another game, too, actually. I know I was originally going to do one, but I have another one that I want to talk about, unless Mike takes it. But I do like the fact that they're willing to do so, and they had so much success with it. And it proves, at least from what I've seen, is it really proves that you can do more with a formula that hasn't really been experimented with a lot. Like, again, the only female protagonist that you could really think of is, like, Princess Peach, where she's always in danger, or Lara Croft Tomb Raider, where it's like it's been getting better over the years, but now I'm happy to see that there's one like Horizon Zero Dawn where it's literally just a badass woman with a bow. And you know what? That's all you really need to do. You don't have to have something else try to code something else in the game to try to make it sell. No, you don't need it. So I just want to talk about that one shortly, but otherwise I'm going to talk about a different one for a longer time.
Okay. No, but yeah, I agree. I think, like you've mentioned, Horizon Zero Dawn, it was a great game. I'm not trying to take it from that, but I think the main thing about it, like you said, was like the cultural boundaries it broke. It had an amazing story, the strength of a female protagonist. I feel like that game was just so appropriate for the time period that was in. But then the gameplay, and it was amazing too.
It was just a good game.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal game. I feel bad for all the people that don't own a PlayStation 4 because it was a console exclusive, but it was a great one.
It was a console exclusive, and I'm already getting the Switch, so it'll be quite some time until I could get my hands on a PS4.
Well,
yeah, it might be a while, but anyway.
My game for you will make you feel better about getting the Switch, because one of the games that I wanted to talk about, and this I think was the second best game, even though it won first at the Game Awards.
Battlefront 2.
Wow, very poetic. Is Breath of the Wild. This was a game that I fell in love with when I first played it. It's weird because when I think of my favorite Zelda game before Breath of the Wild came out, I was so about Wind Waker because, it had a good story. You had the temples in order. I kind of like that Zelda formula where you get a weapon, you use it in that temple. You sort of follow that pattern that every Zelda game has had.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild essentially threw all of that away, and I think a lot of people were a bit concerned about it, but it did it perfectly. I mean, Breath of the Wild, I think it sort of took hints from games like Skyrim and stuff and sort of mixed it with Zelda and sort of try to make the ultimate RPG experience for Zelda by giving you an open world that you can explore. You can do things whatever order you want to do it in. If you want to go to Death Mountain first, you can. You'd probably get killed and murdered, but you can. Or you can just go fight Ganon right off the bat.
I love that. You can just, they're like, yeah, there's the last boss. Go ahead, do it. I dare you.
Yeah.
But that's not the fun of an open world game like that. No, the fun of an open world game is exploring and seeing all the things that you can do in there. And I think that's what they nailed there. They nailed the open world game. And for Zelda games that are usually pretty linear, I love the fact that they knocked it out of the park with Breath of the Wild.
Right. And I like the fact that they leave the choice up to you. If you want to be the type of gamer that ends the game as soon as you can, you want to go straight for Ganon, you can do that. If you're the kind of person that wants to spend hundreds of hours finding everything, you can do that. If you're the type of person that likes to go for the hard stuff first, you can do that. If you want to fight with the weakest weapons, that's your choice. I mean, everything, you can do whatever you want to do. There were very few things I felt that you couldn't do. Some things were really hard to accomplish, to be sure, but you can try, and the game lets you experiment like that. With bombs, you can... It's like the physics engine in the game is great because you can use telekinesis, you can use bombs to sort of activate certain things. You can light your weapons on fire if they're wooden weapons. If there's a lightning storm, your metal weapons sort of attract you to the lightning and you could get shocked by lightning. It's just every little detail that game did perfectly. And that's what I love about it is I've put over 100 hours into the game, and when I play it, I still find new things constantly. Almost every 10 minutes, it feels like I'm finding something that I didn't know about before. And I think that's great. And so this game, it lets you do so much. It lets you explore the world however you want to and make the decisions you want to. And I think there's never been a game like that before. And so even though it's not my favorite game of the year, I can easily see why people voted it as the best game of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, so that's all I have to say for that one.
Yeah.
All right, Travis, go ahead.
Okay, so my other game that I'll talk about, I was kind of on the fence going between both of these because I really, really enjoyed both of these games. One of them, or actually I streamed both of them. I streamed both of these games with the Super Nintendudez, and they're both in the horror, and those would be Outlast 2 and also Resident Evil 7.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I definitely loved that game because I remembered the name and everything. So I'll talk
numbers.
about Outlast 2 more because Outlast 1 was on my top 5 game list. And a thing I recognized after playing the second one is I can't even, like, play the first one again and even be remotely scared because it's just so linear and, like, predictable. Whereas Cody, he just got Outlast 2, and I've been watching him and his friends do it, and I was still legitimately scared at times because I had no idea where the hell Scythe Lady was. I forget her name.
Martha.
Martha, that was it. I was going to say Maria because I knew it started with an M. Martha sounds right, though. So I was like, where the hell is she? And then he was, like, pushing something, and then all of a sudden, she just, like, smacked him in the face with the scythe. And I'm like, holy shit. Didn't see that coming. So, like, it was just so good that they still had the same, like, creepy, I can't do anything but hide, atmosphere to it. 'Cause, like, Resident Evil 7, I don't even, like, consider it much of a horror because, like, it was more creepy and, like, more story-based, so I wasn't scared playing it, especially in the one boss where I was just frustrated beyond all reason because
I was scared watching it.
I know you were, Nick, but yeah, but like for LS2, they pushed their boundaries a lot further in that like they went definitely much more involved with the story. Not saying the story was perfect, but it definitely connected a lot more within it than just like, oh, I'm just a reporter and I got trapped here and now I need to get out.
Right.
Like there's...
Well, that's thing. That's thing I like about Outlast 2 is like I feel like it pushed the boundaries of horror without being too much. You know.
Right.
Like there was no point where I was like, okay, this is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it made sense and it was scary, but it never felt like they went over the top. You know.
Right. Yeah, and then like another thing, because I know you and I were talking about this while, or like right after I finished playing, was even though there's like no sort of signs or like, hey, this is where you have to go, guys. Like, I still had a really good idea of where I should be going, but they never like just threw it there like, hey, this is what you have to do. So like, it still gave you that sense of freedom that like, I could go look over there if I wanted to, but I feel like going down this path is the way to go.
Yeah. I would say Outlast 2, I think, was one of the most underrated games of the year. Because, like you said, it had, like, perfect level design. You like you said, you knew where to go. And the AI in that game, and I would say Resident Evil 7 had it too, where the AI in those games were perfect. They weren't set on, like, a linear path. They sort of kind of, it was random. Like, they would know where you are, and they would sort of hover in your area, but they weren't on predictable paths where you're like, okay, as soon as they turn right, I can go. You know, you don't know which direction they're going to turn. You can't just memorize paths. So I think both of those games were excellent in that regard.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. Why I had a tough time choosing which one, but since I'm a Outlast man, I decided to go with the Outlast route.
Yeah, and I will vouch too for Resident Evil 7 because I do agree that game is less horror. I think, you know, because it's survival horror, it's like a different feel.
Exactly.
What I liked about Resident Evil 7 was sort of the dread that it gave you. It's not really like fear. It's more I don't want to say depression, but like you said, it's story based. It's sort of something that it puts you down and sort of like leaves you in despair, I guess, but if like, that makes sense.
I was definitely much more blown away at the end of Resident Evil 7 than I was Outlast 2. Because like their twist on everything at the end blew my freaking mind.
Yeah, I think Resident Evil 7 was
connected.
Yeah, I think Resident Evil 7 was more like a story experience, whereas Outlast 2 was more the gameplay experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would definitely
both
agree
were great.
With that.
All right, so Nick, you got another game you wanted to talk about.
I do actually. So I'm sorry if I'm stealing this one from you, Mike, but I actually do want to talk about Cuphead just a little bit. I totally forgot to. Did I steal yours?
No, you did not. Trust me.
Okay, good. Because I want to talk about this game just because for a couple reasons. But the reason why I'm saying that this is actually the game of 2017, and you know what? Yes, I'm going to talk about things that are obvious really first. First is that it's a 2D run and gun kind of game, kind of like Contra. And by the way, Contra 3, crazy, ridiculous hard. But the thing that I like about Cuphead being one of the main games that was hugely anticipated and talked about this year, when you have other games like Uncharted, Injustice 2, Middle-earth: Shadow of War, Assassin's Creed, Nier Automata. We have all of these games, but Cuphead was literally a nod to the other classics where it's just a 2D game, run and gun. The graphics looked really nice, but it's a certain art style is what I liked about it. And it shows that those games are still around and can still be huge successes. And basically what I loved about it is I wanted to basically show that you don't have to have all of these crazy things that a lot of AAA games have to be a success. Cuphead is a pretty simple concept, like a nod to like the 1930s cartoon sort of art style, and it did really well. Like I saw a whole bunch of people streaming it. I saw a lot of big names talking about it. A lot of people reviewing it, and I think it did a really good job this year. I know it kind of fell off not a little after a while, but it showed that this game had success, despite I know there's some control issues that it had. But I think Cuphead was at least in my mind game of the year, just because of that fact, because that it can actually compete, and it's not a crazy HD graphic kind of game, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, I will say that I pretty much agree with Cuphead. I think the cool thing about that game too is it had difficulty, and I know that's kind of a weird thing to like fixate on, but I feel like a lot of games that come out today are kind of easier, and we've talked about it. I think it's because of the length of games. But it's cool that Cuphead came out. Yeah, like Mario Odyssey, which is the easiest game I've played in forever. It felt like a child's game. I guess it is, but like a little child's game. But Cuphead, every boss you face is difficult. You get through one insanely hard boss, and then one right after that is 10 times more difficult, and you don't get a break, but it's satisfying. It's one of those games that's not cheap. You know, you see what you have to do, you just have to do it. And I love games like that like give you a challenge that's satisfying.
Yeah, and it's not something that you can cheese either, too. It's just like you find it. It's like you got to find a way to beat the boss, and once you do, you just got to do it. That's just all it is.
Yeah,
it's kind of a no BS kind of game. And honestly, as much as I hate to admit it, Contra 3 is very similar to that kind of mindset. It's a run and gun game like Cuphead. You get some power ups, and there's no crazy secret tactic there is to beat it. Just got to figure out how to do it and do it.
Exactly. And that's what I like about Cuphead.
Yeah.
So if that's all you had to say about Cuphead, I can move on to mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been waiting so long to talk about this game because I'm super excited for it. This was a game I didn't think I was going to like very much, and I can easily say it's one of my top 5 games. I don't know if it's number 1, but I could definitely make a case for it being my favorite game of all time, and that is Persona 5. I loved this game so much. If you haven't played it, you're probably not going to understand what I'm about to say, but there are scenes in the game called Awakenings, and these, I think, are some of the most powerful cutscenes I've ever seen in any video game. There's about 5 or 6 of them in it. It's cool because this game has such an outlandish theme. You're a group of like high school kids that sort of just rebel against adults that are mean. And so you go into this sort of alternate world where you can change the hearts of people. I mean, the idea of it is so ridiculous, but it touches on topics that are so close to home. You know, like one of the first sort of topics that they talk about is like, a teacher that is like abusive to their students, you know, whether it's through like sexual harassment or, you know, through like just bullying and things like that. You see a part where someone is like driven to try to kill themselves. It's just a lot of like really close to home moments that the game sort of uses to sort of tell a very intriguing story. And so it's kind of like Danganronpa in that sense, where it's very outlandish in the way it does it, but it touches on very important things. You know, without trying to spoil too much, there's a part where there's like this artist that's like trying to use his students to like further himself. You know, there's like robbers and things like that. So it touches on like these things that we can all relate to in a way that's, you know, it's like superheroes, you know, like we all want to believe in superheroes. We know they're not real, but, you know, we do it because, you know, we want to make the world a better place. And I think that's what these guys are kind of like. You know, it's like a fantasy world where you can solve everyday problems by doing this. And so I think just the story of the game is what really stood out to me. But on top of that, the combat is great. It's a turn-based game, but it's a different style of turn-based. Even if you just like look at the menu screen that shows up in the middle of a fight, it's so like it's exciting. You know, it's just like it's a fun setup where it's not just a menu that's straight down. It's all like flying out. You have like the attack button, you have the gun button. It's very involved, even though it's just a simple turn-based game.
And I was gonna say also I hear the AI in that game is actually good, which should be should be something that's really important for a JRPG to focus on, but especially like smart AI is something that, at least in my experience, I don't find a lot in my JRPG games that I've played.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of my favorite things about the game is the AI in it. The enemies all have, like, mortal weaknesses to them that if you find, you can find a way to easily take them over. But if you can't find that, the enemies can decimate you. I've had enemies that have, like, wiped out my whole party in, like, 1 or 2 turns. So it's sort of a race, you know, where you have to try to figure them out before they figure you out, you know? And so it is. That's what I love about it is, like, it's not like a game like Pokemon or like other like easier RPGs where it's like, oh, you know, you can follow the rules, but you don't have to, you know, like in Pokemon, if you're facing a fire type enemy, you don't have to use a water type enemy, you know, you can find other ways to beat it. Whereas in Persona, you kind of have to find that weakness if you want to like consistently beat enemies, you know, or else it'll punish you for it. And that's what I like about it is it forces you to think and stay on your toes. And that's what the boss fights are like too. Because in the boss fights, you know, there are certain attacks they'll do that you have to guard against. Or they'll have certain attacks where you have to, like, try to find a different strategy to defeat them. It forces you to constantly be thinking. And then one of the last things I like about it are just, like, the character interactions. I think this game has a great sense of humor. You grow to love each of the characters because it takes so long to build them up. I mean, that's the reason I think this game might not be as liked by some people. Is like it almost feels like it's about 10 hours into the game where you really start the game, but it's because the game takes so much time to like really build your care for the characters, you know, kind of like what Danganronpa does.
So you would never recommend this game to Eric, is what you're saying?
Right, Eric would hate this kind of game.
Yeah, and Dragon Quest VII too. Dragon Quest VII does something very similar with that intro.
Yeah, but that's what I like in games. I like games that, you know, it's not a sprint. You know, I don't want a game that just rushes to finish itself. I want a game that like explores itself and like introduces you to every character and shows off every corner of the game. And I feel like that's what this game does, to where when it ended I was sad because I felt like I knew these characters, you know, like you bond with them, you learn about each of them, and it's a game that I'll never forget. And on top of that, the soundtrack is amazing. I think this game wins for best soundtrack of the year for me. The combat fight song is amazing. The final boss fight music is amazing. Each area has like its own unique soundtrack. It has different sounds for like weather season, flu season. Like it does everything for everything, and it's incredible. So again,
I've heard Atlas has done an incredible job with Persona 5.
I own Persona 4, 3, and 2 now because of it. I haven't played them yet, but as soon as I finish this game, I'm like, I need more Persona. So I ended up buying like most of the others. But yeah, this game definitely won mine for best game of the year.
All right, sounds like a plan. If you guys are all good, I'm good as well.
All right.
Yep, I'm good.
All right, normal outro like you always. Comment section, use it, please. Tell us how much you love Mike. Only Mike though, not us. At least not me and Travis.
Yeah, we're mediocre.
Anyway,
so.
Yeah, we're mediocre at best. But anyway, leave the comment section below. What do you think the best game of 2017 was? And as always, bye.
Sonic Boom.
Bye. That wasn't this year.